Yesterday, Dune Awakening had their final dev stream before the early access launch, and inside of it, they had this whole segment where they went a little bit more in depth as to exactly what the whole Landsraad system is going to look like. And because these Landsrads play such a big role in the whole end game loop of Dune Awakening, I figured they deserved their own video to be talked about a little bit more in depth than we did on the dev stream coverage that we did yesterday. Check those videos out if you haven't already. But let's go ahead and cut this plug and dive into these Landsrads, starting off with a bit of a basic overview. These are essentially just a weekly competition between the two houses where they compete completing challenges on what is basically a bingo board. The winning house of each week's Landsraad is going to be able to pick a gameplay impacting change that is going to affect the entirety of that world for the upcoming week. Each of these bingo board pieces are a separate challenge or mission or goal that needs to be accomplished in order for a house to have successfully claimed that tile. These challenges are not just strictly going to be PvP either. As you can see here, there's a challenge that wants you to eliminate enemy sandflies, and then there's even another challenge that wants you to deliver buggies to a specific location. This actually makes it to where PvE is going to play a big role in determining who wins each week's Landsraad. And speaking of the whole win stipulation here, essentially the first house to successfully connect a bingo win that week's Landsraad. On top of that though, each guild's contribution to each tile is tracked and rewards are given out for that accordingly. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but let's go ahead and start to dive a little bit deeper into this Landsraad system to see if we can pull out any extra information that I think is worth knowing. For starters, let's go ahead and talk about how the voting for the weekly decree is going to work. Essentially, whichever of the houses wins the weekly Landsraad is going to have several guilds that have contributed the most to the tiles that successfully won the Landsraad. And it's the leaders of the guilds that have contributed the most who are going to be given voting power when it comes to selecting the decree. From here, it looks like they're voting between 3 different decrees per week, and obviously whichever one receives the most votes is what's implemented. In this example here, they show the choice between a 33% boost to melee damage or a 50% boost in the experience rates for your house, or access to a unique Landsraad weapons vendor for the week. And the last choice of weapons vendor here, they go into a little bit more detail, saying that it would give the winning house access to this unique weapons vendor for the week, which to me sounds wild. It'll be interesting to see exactly what comes out of these weapon vendors and what sort of currency is required to purchase the weapons there. You know, are we talking Solari or are we talking Spice? It'll be interesting to see. Let me know down in the comments if you guys have any ideas. I'm also curious as to how many different decrees there are in total, and then obviously which of those decrees are the most impactful on gameplay, because you could argue that a 50% experience boost, while being nice, isn't very gameplay impactful. However, access to a unique weapons vendor sounds like a really nice reward. So let me know down in the comments what sort of decrees you would like to see coming out of these Landsrads. But now I want to dive a little bit deeper into what to expect from this bingo board itself, what sort of challenges we're going to be looking at, and then obviously the rewards for those challenges. The bingo board itself is more of like bingo chess, or Connect 5 is probably a better comparison here, because if the opposing house is about to connect 5 of the tiles here, you're going to want to block that at all costs. So surely there's going to be a bit of back and forth each week, which is going to lead to a really interesting dynamic where certain tasks like delivering buggies may actually end up being the difference maker in who ends up winning this week's Landsraad. You can see in this example that they gave on the stream yesterday, one of these tasks requires you to deliver buggies, and you're going to get a total of 2,400 points per buggy that you deliver, and you're going to need 70,000 points in order to complete the tile. All these numbers are subject to change, but as it sits, this means that it would require 30 buggies being delivered in order for you to complete the task. But it is also worth mentioning here that it also says that additional progress can be gained by holding a control point. These control points are like King of the Hill style random events. I think, I'm not entirely sure. These may end up being in set locations each week that you can discover, and then as soon as you do discover them, you can hold them down and slowly gain points for that task. There's a lot going on here with this whole control the point system. I'm curious about inside of the stream. They show it off a little bit here. All of the control points are inside of the deep desert, but they still don't really give us the answer. You know, does your guild have to be sitting on this control point constantly in order to be gaining progress towards the task? Does the control point decay after a couple of hours, or can you literally just sit here until the task is completed? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered here, but at the very least, we can say that controlling these is going to minimally contribute to a specific task on the board. It's not just overall winning the whole weekly Landsraad that you're after either, though, because there are actually rewards tied to each individual task on this board. This is either based on your guild's progression or your own personal contribution to the task. I'm not sure, but you can see in this example here, if we manage to get 14,000 points contributed to this buggy task, we would get our hands on a light armor swatch, which is something that'll change the color scheme of any of the light armor that you can equip. But even better yet, for just contributing 3,500 points to this task, you could get the focused buggy cutter ray at the 5th tier, which at some point in time in the game may end up being like, oh, I already have the 6th tier of that, so why would I want the 5th tier? But coming from the beta, talking about getting a buggy tier just as a reward from a Landsraad quest, I'm all about it. All of the rewards on this list actually look really great. You got the 10,000 Solari, 50 plus steel armor plating, a Baron's blood bag. These rewards inside of these tasks are for sure going to be something that you want to keep track of to make sure that you're getting the ones that you really want to be getting each week. Overall, this whole Landsraad system looks a whole lot more fleshed out than I had anticipated it being, and I am really excited to jump into Dune Awakening and start messing around with this whole Landsraad system. More importantly, the actual decrees that come after a Landsraad. Turning full loot PvP on for a week sounds absolutely wild. But that's about all I wanted to break down today. We're going to be going live right here on YouTube and on Twitch for the early access launch of Dune Awakening, where we're going to be implementing our day 1 speed running strategy. I'll have a link to the Twitch down in the description, so be sure to stop by and check out our progress on day 1. If you made it this far into the video, comment "made it" down below so I can give you an extra shout out. Hit that like button on your way out of here. It helps these videos out a ton inside of the algorithm. But I hope y'all have an amazing day. I'm out.